So the Gemara said, according to the Rabbanan, who holds, because the Gemara decided that Shechita, the Kavanah of Shechita is similar to the Kavanah for Tefillah. So the Gemara said, according to the Rabbanan, that you do need Kavanah, some level of Kavanah for Shechita, and just causing a knife to fall off, and it's checked after it fell off, would not be an acceptable form of Kavanah. So if you take the equivalent by Tefillah, it wouldn't need Tefillah either. It wouldn't need some type of equivalent for Tefillah. So how would Rav explain why he would hold that the Tefillah would be good? So the Gemara says, Hitaka doesn't hold like the Rabbanan at all, because it says v'zavachta. The Rabbanan hold you need some type of kavanah, but not a kavanah l'shem zvicha. You only need that for kochim. So the question was, there's no makar that you should just need kavanah for some type of cutting. If you see anywhere in the project that you need some type of kavanah, it will be full-blown kavanah for shechita, where the Rabbanan hold you don't need that. So therefore, the taina that Rav Nosson would have to the Rabbanan is, where is there a justification to require stama kavanah, not a kavanah l'shem zvicha? Okay. Amar Rava, we're at the two dots, right at the bottom of Alamed Aleph on the base. Amar Rava, shechat para, v'shechat behema acheres ima. What if you shechted a paraduma? Now we know there's a halacha by the paraduma that you cannot multitask when you shecht a paraduma. If you're doing another maisa together with the shchitas paraduma, then the paraduma that you shechted will be possible. So what happens if shechat paraduma? If shechat behema acheres ima, but the shechita of the behema acheres was shaloi bekavana. So according to Reb Nosson, that would be a good shechita of the other animal. According to the Rabbanon, it would not be a good shechita. So oy bezoi l'divrei hakol psula. If it's shechat par v'shachat behema acheres ima, where you had kavanah to shecht other behema, l'divrei hakol psula. According to everybody, that's possible because you've tried to multitask. You've done two things together. But turning on to Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, nishchata behema acheres ima. What if you were shechting the paraduma and some other animal ran up against the blade of the knife, and it's gevorn geschochten without any kavanah whatsoever? Zog the Gemara l'Rab Nosson para psula behema kshera. According to Rab Nosson, the shechita of the behem without any kavanah is a good shechita. If it's a good shechita, by definition, you've done two things. You've shechted the paraduma along shechting the behema of Chullin, and therefore it will be possible. As Rashi says, "V'afagav the shalom bechavana lo mosach daite." He had no kavanah whatsoever for the other animal, and therefore there is no hesach hadas whatsoever from his focus on the shechita of the paraduma. V'lo mikri misasik b'melacha acheres. It doesn't have the psul of being oisik b'melacha acheres, of multitasking, because he was totally focused on the paraduma. He had zero kavanah whatsoever to shech the second animal. So why, according to Reb Nosson, is the paraduma psula? Hoilu shchita ksheira, about the shchita of the other animal is kosher. Mifsala, the paraduma is possible. Mishum v'shachat oisa v'lo oisa v'chaverta. So there's two factors here. If you have kavanah for something else, and your total focus is not on the paraduma, that's possible the paraduma. But there's a whole separate psul. And that is, by the paraduma of the shachat oisa, you can only shecht one at a time. So if you ended up shechting two at a time, even though there was absolutely no diversion of your kavanah from the paraduma, it will still passel the paraduma. However, l'Rabbanan, who holds that a shechita b'lo kavanah is not a good shechita, so then para kshera, that would end up making the para kshera behema psula. What a twist of events. When is it a kosher shechita and it costs you $100,000? It's when the shechita is kosher according to Reb Nosson and you lost your paraduma. Better the behema should be in the vela, the secondary behema, and the paraduma should be kosher. Frankly, Gemara pshita. Why is this a chiddush? Let's just see Rashi. Rabbanan para kshera. The shchitas behemas chullin lav shchitahi. If it's not a shchita, then it's obvious that the paradum is ksheira. And the other problem of not being focused on the paraduma, rather you're diverting some of your focus to the malacha acheres, that's not happening here. It's shaloi b'kavana. The time of the malacha acheres, the svara of malacha acheres, why it tassels the paraduma, and here you don't have that. V'heicha the lo yichav the malacha acheres, like in our case, leka hesech hadas. V'achemrin lekamon nechtecha dalas ima divrikol ksher. If you cut a dalas with intent while you're shechting the paraduma, then the paraduma will be possible. But if while you're swinging the knife to shech the animal, a dalas got cut without any of your concentration, focus, or effort, it's not going to impact the kashrus of the paraduma. Akati loish me'inon dechola oiskim b'para poislon oisim b'malacha. We don't even know the halacha yet that anyone who is working on the paraduma cannot be involved in doing anything else. So zokt Gemara nishchita behema acheres l'Rabbanon it's trichalei. According Rab Nosson it's trichalei. According to Rab Nosson, this halacha that if a second animal got shechted, even though you had zero kavanah whatsoever, while you were shechting the paraduma, that the paraduma is psula, that's the chiddush of this halacha. Dafka, you can't shecht another animal together with the paraduma if the second animal is also for the paraduma. Maybe when you say the shachat oisa, it means only one paraduma, but another animal that was geshachted with it shouldn't be a problem. Kamash malon, even shechting an animal of chullin, but while the shechita of the paraduma is occurring, will pass. Chodach talas ima divra kol psula. That's a diversion of your kavanah called hechsach hadas. But nechtecha talas ima divra kol kisheira. Zok the Mishnah. Nafla sakin v'higbiha. The sakin fell down, and this means you started to shecht, the sakin fell down, meaning there was a pause, and you picked it up. Or while you're shechting, naflu kelev, his pants fell down. So he paused, v'higbihan, and he picked them up. So we're talking about a small pause in the shechita. His chizas sakin, right before he shechted, he ground down the sakin to make it nice and sharp. V'ofen v'balt, he spent so much energy in preparing the knife, he was very tired when he started the shechita, and it caused him to have to take a small break in the shechita. Ubo chaverai v'shachat, and his friend came and finished off the shechita for him. Im shah kedei shechita, if the amount of time that he paused was long enough to do a shechita, psula. So the Mishnah is teaching us how long do you need to wait, how long do you need to pause to trigger a psula of shia. Zok the Mishnah im shah kedei shechita.
Why is that the Yosy whose pants fell down and
why does that have to give these details? I'm not sure. Probably so that MDY will have good videos. Rab Shimon Omer, he has such a geschmack video on the fellow who the wave fell on him and his keli. So he has a whole video about this fellow who bought at a kosher hardware store. He haggled and haggled and haggled, and he bought a glass at a discounted price. When he wanted to go toilet in the store's mikveh, they said, no, for that we charge you 5 shekel. So he said, I'm not paying another penny. So he went to the beach, and he wanted to toilet by the beach, but there was admission to get to the beach, so he couldn't get there either. So he waited by the fence of the beach, and a big wave came and splashed all over him and all over the keli, and he was so excited, he got it for free. But in the meanwhile, as he was getting ready to pack up and to go home from the beach, another big wave comes, knocks him over, and the glass shatters. It was about the video. I can't show it because I don't think we have enough bandwidth for two televisions. It's the amount of time of bikor, we'll have to see what that means. Okay, Bika Mefarish B'Gemara. Zog the Heilige Gemara. My Kedei Shchita. What does it mean you waited the amount of time of a Shchita? Omarav Kedei Shchita as Behema Acheres. It doesn't mean the amount of time it would take you to finish up the Shchita. It means the amount of time that you'd have to spend shechting a whole new animal. Meaning it's a longer time. It's not a chomer, just a couple of seconds until the amount of time it would have taken you to finish a Shchita. Rather, it's the amount of time of a full Shchita. That's a kula. Omarei Abchana Rabasi L'Rav. Kedei Shchitas Behema LeBehema V'Oif L'Oif. What is the timing? For a behema, which takes longer to shecht, you have that amount of time before shehiyah when shechting a behema. An oif, which it takes much less to shecht, there the period of time of shehiyah would be much less. Or af behema l'oif. Even the amount of shehiyah, the pause, when you're shechting an oif, in order for it to pass, it has to also be as long as it takes to shecht a behema. Amalu, he told him, when Rav told his Talmidim, he told Rav Kana Rabasi, when I was by my uncle Rav Chia, I didn't feel comfortable asking him this question. I wasn't so heimish with him, the Ishaile, that I should ask him. So that right now is a suffix. When you're shechting a knife, how much time do you have before Shehiyah? The amount of time it takes to shecht a knife, let's say it's 1 second, or the amount of time it takes to shecht a behema, which is, let's say, 3 seconds. Omarav, kedei shchitas behema lebehema v'oif l'oif. That's what Rav said, which means he's machmer. U'shmuel omar afilu behema l'oif. Shmuel's mekel and said the oif won't be possible with shehiyah unless you waited enough time to actually shecht a behema. V'chein chiyas Rav and Rabbi Yochanan afilu behema l'oif. Rabbi Yochanan also holds the kula. Rabbi Chanina Amar, Kedei Shiyavi Behema Acheres V'Yishchait. The amount of time it takes to go to the store, buy another animal and shecht. That could be a half a day. Freit the Gemara, Yavi Afilu Me'alma. That means Nasata Dvarecha L'Shiurin. Because if there's a store next door, then it takes 2 minutes. If there's a store across the city, it takes 2 hours. They can't make a shear that's too dependent upon the scenario there. All it means is you have an animal right there. The question is, do you just take the 3 seconds that it takes to do the actual shechita, or do you also add to it the prep for the shechita, which normally they take the animal, they force it to the floor, and then they shecht it. So does it also include the extra 2 seconds that it takes to lower the animal to the floor? That is the extra amount of time that Rav Papa is adding over the shear of Rav and Shmuel. Ami b'marav mishmeid Rabbi Yosy b'Rab Chanina, kedei shiagbi'ena, the amount of time it will take to lift up the animal from the floor, v'yarbitzena, and then put it back down on the floor, v'yishchait, b'daka v'gasa l'gasa. If it's a behemah like a sheep, then the amount of shear is the time it takes to shech the daka. And if it's for the gasa, then it's the amount of time it takes to the gasa. So huajins are toisvis, the amount of time it takes to shecht an oif would be for the oif. So Rabbi Chanina seems to agree with Rav and not with Shmuel. Let's see what Rashi says. Because Rashi paskins on this Gemara. Rashi says, Daka le daka, v'shehiyas behema daka mesharinu b'chtei shchidas behema daka de kavasa. Zot Rashi. Rashi always paskins on Chullin. V'afagav de Rav Rabbi Yochanan alach Rabbi Yochanan, even though he normally passes like Rabbi Yochanan, and what does Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan says you have more time for an oif, you have the amount of time it takes to shecht a behema, afilu behema l'oif. Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yochanan is mekel, nevertheless, keeping the kamlei. Rabbi Yosy b'Rab Chanina bish titase de Rav. Since Rabbi Yosy b'Rab Chanina holds like the shit of Rav, because he held gasa l'gasa daka l'daka, so by extension he would also hold oif l'oif. Domer daka l'daka v'gasa l'gasa memel shmin v'oif v'oif v'avdina l'chomra. But by an oif, if he was sure more than the amount of time it takes to shecht oif, it's going to be possible. Now, what Rashi seems to sidestep is, what about the preparation? we're bringing a raya from Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina, who agrees to Rav. He agrees to Rav that it must be oif loif because he makes a distinction between daka l'daka and gasa l'gasa. But he has a whopping difference. He says chidesh yak biena v'yabitzena. That's a much longer amount of time. So there's actually a discussion in the Rishonim if when Rav said that he also means chidesh yak bienu v'yabitzena. Everyone means that. The question is which type of animal. Or it could be there's a machlokes about this itself. Could be Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina. Rashi seems to learn that Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina is agreeing with Rav, which means maybe when Rav said kidei oif l'oif, it's agaret, that it means also the time it takes to prep it. But there are those Rishonim who learn that no, that's a machlokes between Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina and Rav.
What else would be the difference between daka and gas? It's not preparation.
No, maybe it's the preparation is added to everyone. Preparation is added to everyone. So but either one includes the preparation stage. The whole question is the amount of time that you're giving for the oif to be shia, is that the amount of time it takes to shech the behema, or is that the amount of time it takes to shech the knife? But it's plus the preparation stage. Is what some Rishonim learn, which seems to be what Rashi learns, because Rashi seems to say that Rabbi Yosy Bar Chanina and Rav say the same thing, even though at first glance it doesn't seem like they do. Amarava, hashechet besakin ra. What happens if you shech with a dull knife? Which means instead of taking 3 seconds to shecht, it could take 15 minutes to shecht because it's very dull, it's not cutting. So hashechet besakin ra, afilu kol hayom kuloi kshera. Even you need to go back and forth all day because it's severing very slowly, it's still a kosher shchita. Be'rova, shehiyos ma'u sheyitztarfu. What happens if you have multiple shehiyos, but each shehiyah is less than the amount it takes to passel? But if you add the sum total of all those breaks, then it will be mitzaref.
The whole point of shkita is start on time, so if it's taking all day to check
The purpose of shchita is not tzar b'lachaim. The purpose of shchita is because the Torah tells us to shecht. We like also explaining how our method of shchita is much more easier for the behema, but that's not the reason. Even if it was the most painful, excruciating type of slaughter, we still have to do it because it's very sad. So she is mau, she is tafu. First, Gemara v'tivshit lei mididei. Why can't you be posted from Rav's own halacha, where he said "Ashochet besakin ra afilu kol hayom kuloi kshera," meaning that it would not passel. Zok Rashi mididei ashochet besakin ra al malay mistarfi. It means the individual shias will not be mitzaref. The kasol kadaitach va'afilu hifsika omar el shleisha b'pam machas kashir. Rebbe said even if you were going at it all day, right? Now you can't go at it all day without a small pause. Vice the case, Rebbe holds those small pauses are not a concern, and you don't add them up. Zok Gemara Hasam b'delay shah. No, maybe when Rebbe said Hashech b'sakin ra, it literally means you didn't stop for a moment. Rafuna asked the following shaila. What about shah b'miyot simanim? So this again was the subject of a massive machlokes we had yesterday by hichlid b'miksa simanim. So according to Rashi, shah b'miyot simanim means you shechted 2 simanim, rave 2 simanim, which means you've totally shechted the animal. And then afterwards, after you shechted rave base simanim, the final miyot of the 2 simanim, you pause before you shechted them. So at first glance we should say it's done. Rashi learns that this Gemara holds that it would be a problem. Mau zok to Gemara teku. And Rashi learns because of that even if you already shechted Reb Shnayim, and he says this applies across the board to all the psulei shchita, you shechted Reb Shnayim perfectly, and then you made Shia, our Gemara, Drasa, Hagrama, Chalad or Iker, any one of the psulei shchita that occurred even after you shechted Reb Shnayim, it's still going to pass on misafik, because once we have a teku, so it's Rashi we go lechomer. Tosfos argued on that. Tosfos had different shotim, and Tosfos said Avadi that's not the case. Avad l'shah b'miyat simonim here means if you made shia in the first half. Talk to Helig Gemara weiter. Shuvin Omer im shah kedei bikar. My kedei bikar. What is this kedei bikar? Rabbi Yochanan kedei bikar shel chacham. The amount of time it takes for the chacham to come check your knife. I'm sorry? Well, what's the chiddush of what?
If you do it in the first half, then it's the regular case of shir or whatever.
No, because when you cross the finish line, when you get to the half point, it was perfect. Right before he made a shia, but then he continued on, and he.
But once he made the shia, it wasn't the half point. It's a regular case of shir.
Well, what if it was the kana? And even if the kana was cut, it wouldn't be a problem, right? And even Rashi even asks a kasha from a Gemara that we learned that says that shah b'mitzvah simanim by an oif. Let's say an oif, half of the kana was cut out, and you just cut the rest. Avad, that would be kosher. Rashi challenges himself. According to me, it wouldn't be kosher. So to Rashi, maybe that Gemara is lavdafka, and maybe we really have to be machmer. Tosh says no. Zot Gemara, what is this beaker? The chacham is come and check your knife. Frank Gemara once again, if the rough's close by, the rough come quickly, then it's going to be a shorter shear. Zot Gemara, beaker tabach chacham. It means the butcher himself, the shaykhid himself, knows how to check a knife. It's the amount of time it takes for him to check his own knife, a mere few seconds. Zot the Mishnah. So now we know how long is the amount of time that you pause that would pass on the shechita. Shechad is a veshet. What if you first shechted the veshet? So you shechted one simon of an animal, upasagas agageres, and you ripped out the gageres. That's not a kosher shechita. What about pasagas agageres? First he cut out the gageres without shechting it. V'achach shechad is a veshet, and then he shechted the veshet. Or a third option, or shechad echad mehen. He shechted one of them, v'himtin lo at shemesa, and he waited until the animal died before he shechted the other one. Oy shehichlid es hasachin tachas hasheni. We had this case earlier, and the Gemara said the case over here is that you put your knife behind. So this is the case where you shechted the first simon normally. So normally the first simon you shecht, if you shechted normally, is you cut through the throat and then through the kana. Then you pulled the knife out and you stipped it in between the backbone, between the spine and the veshet, and then you pulled up. So the halach is upaskoi, and you ripped the veshet. Rabbi Sheva v'omer nevela, Rabbi Kiva v'omer treifa. So for sure this is not a good shechita. The question is, if this happened in the course of the shechita, is that considered a nevela like Rabbi Shevav, or is that only a treifa? The nafkamina would be, of course, if it's tamei. Surely you cannot eat it. Kalal Omer Rabbi Shevav, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua, Kol shenifsala b'shchitasa. If the psul occurred during the shchita, nevela, that makes it into a nevela. But Kol sheshchitasa keroyu v'dover achagorm lo lipasel. So the animal had a punctured veshet, but you shechted it normally. That's going to be a treifa. The Haidaloi Rabbi Kiva, and at the end Rabbi Kiva was moida that it really should be a nevela. Zochet the Gemara. Shachat is a veshet, Haidaloi Rabbi Kiva. So Rabbi Kiva is moida to whatever you see in the Mishnah. The problem is, that means Rabbi Kiva holds that if you shechted an animal and the veshet was damaged, or the kana was damaged, the halacha is, it would be a nevela. Because that's what our Mishnah is saying over here. Right? It says shachar is veshet, pasuk is gageres, or pasuk gageres v'achar shachar is veshet. So if the gageres was punctured, that would be a treifa, right? And then you shechted the veshet. So the shechita was perfect. Whatever was available to shecht, you shechted. But it was an animal that was treifa. Rabbi Kiva holds that's going to be a nevela. The problem is, Ravinu, the third parak of our Masechta starts off, Elu treifas bebehema. The following are a list of things that make a behema treifa, but not nevela. And what the items are, Nikudas Haveshet, Upasukas Hagageres. But according to Rabbi Kiva now, who agrees with Rabbi Yesheva, it should be a nevela. It shouldn't be a treifa. Bishlam, if Rabbi Kiva would have maintained that all of these shchitos are ksheres and they retirement they devela and it's only a treifa, then that would be perfectly consistent with the Mishnah of Elu treifos. But now that he owed it to nevela, so how could the Mishnah of Elu treifos call these things treifos? They should really be called nevelos. If you shecht and then you're posek, that's going to be within the shchita this occurring, and that will be a nevela. And that's what our Mishnah is talking about. But kan the Mishnah of treifos is sheposak first the gargeres got damaged. Now the animal became a treifa, and then you shechted, so you shechted a damaged animal, that means there was a good shchita, but the animal was treifa. Shachad l'b'soy pasak, that's called nefsalas b'shchita, and therefore it's going to be a nevela. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. But pasak l'b'soy shachad, that first the injury occurred to the animal, and then you shechted it. We look at it kidavar achar gorem lo lipasal damhi. That's like something external to the shchita that pasal the animal, which is a treifa, and that's what the Mishnah in Elu treifos is talking about. Eisver Rabbacha bar Huna l'Rava. Shachad es haveshet upasak es hagageres. This is our Mishnah, right? Shachad es haveshet upasak es hagageres. Or pasak es hagageres v'achagach shachad es haveshet nevela. It says beferish pasak es hagageres before the shchita v'achagach shachad es haveshet. And our Mishnah calls it a nevela. But the way Rava just explained it, it should be called a treifa. Zok to Gemara, Ema, when it says Pasuk Agageres, the Achagach Shachad is a Veshet, it means Pasuk as a Agageres, but before that happened, it was Shachted. Oh, that's right. Ema Kfar Shachad is a Veshet. Meikar, and he had already Shachted the Veshet. Omar Lei, so Rava told Rav Acha Bar Huna, Shtei tshuvas b'davar. There's two reasons why your teretz make no sense at all. Chad d'ahinu kamaisa. What is Tyler? That's exactly the same case. If you tell me shachar is a veshet and the gageres was kfar nifsika, that's mamish the case of that. I'm sorry. If you're going to say that shachar is a veshet, that nifsika gageres, the achar shachar is a veshet means that you shachar the veshet first. That's what the ratio of the Mishnah is. The is another problem. Hatnan ve'achakach. How could you say pasuk as a geres ve'achakach shachar as a veshet means that the shchita of the veshet was first? It specifically says ve'achakach. So that's not a good teretz. We're back to the drawing board because now we need to know, according to Rabbi Akiva, how does he understand the Mishnah of treifos? They should be the ve'los. Maybe Elu treifos doesn't mean treifa in the technical term. It means like we use treifa as a colloquial term. It's treif. We call it a chazer treif. A chazer is not treif. A chazer is a behemoth tameya. So Elu treifos, these are the non-edible items. Elu asuros katani. Really, when it says Elu treifos, it means Elu asuros. V'yesh men nevelos, v'yesh men treifos. Some of the items in the list of Elu treifos are in fact nevelos, such as nifsika hagageres. But some of them are only treifos, like Nika b'nei ma'ayin. Fact Gemara, once you're saying that the Mishnah of Elu treifos is not exclusive to treifos, but it includes the veils as well, so then I'll ask you about many other cases why the Tana of Elu treifos didn't include. V'lechshav nami de Chizkiah. Chizkiah's treifos that we learned about. Domer Chizkiah, also gistra, if you chop the animal in half, nevela, it makes it into nevela. So why isn't that listed in the Mishnah of Elu treifos? V'lechshav nami de Rabbi Lazar, we added as well. Rabbi Lazar, not the yerech v'chalal shalom. If the whole hip is taken out and even the hollow of the hip, means a significant amount is removed. Remember the Gemara said if it sits down you can see the hole, that's called v'chalal shalom. Nevela, that would make it into nevela. So that's also a case that should have been included in the Mishnah of Elu treifos. So Kikatani nevela is the loy mitama machayim. The only type of nevelas that we're talking about are nevelas that while the animal was still alive, they wouldn't be tamei. But aval nevela de mitame mechayim loy katani. If you have an animal who's missing the yerech v'chalal shelo, or an animal that's a gistra, even if it's alive, it's still considered nevela. But the nevela of nikav of nifsak hagageres, that only a nevela once it dies. Rab Shimon Lakish Amar, so that's teretz number one, why it's not shver from the Mishnah of Trefos, because some of the items in the Mishnah of Trefos are in fact nevelos, and which type of nevelos does the Tana mention? He only mentions nevelos that only become tamei when they're dead. But things that are considered dead even when they're alive, like nitla hayech v'chalashla, those are items of nevelos that the Tana didn't include in the list of the Mishnah of Trefos. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar, he has a different shot. He says, so what's our kasha? Our kasha is, Rabbi Kiva holds that nifsak hagageres v'achar shachar aveshet is nevela, just like Rabbi Sheilav in our Mishnah. The Mishnah says Eil Trefos and lists off such a case. So Zok Lakish Amar, kan shachat b'mokam chatach, kan shachat b'loi mokam chatach. It all depends on where you shechted. If you shechted the rest of the gageres where it was chopped open, then it'll be kosher. But if you shecht elsewhere, it wouldn't be. Shachad b'mokam chatach. I'm sorry, punkt verkehrt. Shachad b'mokam chatach. If you shechted where the gageres was nifsak, so that incorporates that chatichas gageres into the shchita. Therefore, nifsala b'shchita, and that would be in the vela. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. But the Mishnah of Trefos is speaking shachad shaloi b'mokam chatach. The shchita was not near where the gageres was cut. So therefore, you made a shchita of a gageres and of a veshet. Grade the gageres was damaged elsewhere, that's going to be a treifa. Ki davar acher gorim law liposel damya. About Zok the Gemara, is it possible that that's how Rab Shimon understands it? The Amar Rab Shimon ben Lakish shachi. The Amar Rab Shimon ben Lakish shachad es hakana. What if someone shechted the kana? So he shechted one siman in the behema, and then the achach nikvareya. Then a siman treifa occurred in this animal, its lung got damaged, and then you shechted the veshet. So the animal became a treifa before the shechita was finished. Is this animal considered a treifa? Because before you finished shechting it, it became treif. Zok Rab Shimon ben Lakish, no. You know why? Sheira. Alma command the mantra b'dikula damya. Once the windpipe, once the gageres, once the kona is severed, what happens to the lung is not relevant anymore. It's already cut off, right? Because that's the bronchial tube. That's the windpipe that goes straight into the lungs.
Check the lungs after sleeping.
I understand, but that's because it was good. It was not severed. Here it got severed during the shechita. The lungs got damaged during the shechita. So if the lungs got damaged if the lungs got damaged after the shechita, there's no concern. We check the lungs for damage that might have occurred before the shechita. If it has sirchus, those naturally would have been there before. But this is, we know for sure, it only came after you already shechted the veshet. So you see from Rab Shimon ben Lakish that he holds command the mantra b'dikula damya. Hachanami, here too, command the mantra b'dikula damya. So how could Rab Shimon ben Lakish say that if you shechted shaloi b'makom hakageres, it's going to be a treifa, not an avela? It doesn't make sense. It's as if there's no kana there. It's as if you only shechted the veshet, because once it's damaged, it's like it's in a basket. It's like it's not even there anymore. As Rashi says, Alma kiva dereya tuluya bekana. Since the lung is hanging off of the bronchial tubes, the nishchar kana, and the kana is already shechted. Hava kamoshe nitla kulam nebehema umeneches besal. If the lung is sitting in a basket, it doesn't matter if the lung gets punctured at that point, even though we didn't finish the shechita yet, because we still have to shech the veshet. And therefore, v'sula mitfra behema. The behema won't become treifa with a damaged lung once the kana is already cut. The gabe pasak ulubusov shachat. So how would that apply to what Rish Lakish wanted to make a distinction between our Mishnah and the Mishnah of Treifus? The gabe pasak ulubusov shachat nami kivan the ruba nifsaga. Once rave of the kana was already damaged, which is a treifa, the hapsaikas hagageres berubahu, so havalei kamancha b'dekula. It's as if there is no veshet. It's as if there's no kana. Because once most of it is punctured, we look at it like it's already completely disconnected. Vishuv eina behema zu b'shas shchita l'semenechat. Now this, what's the difference if I shekel lower down on the kana, so I still cut a kana? That's not cutting the siman. the semen's gone already. I only have a veshet available to me at that point to shecht. Uva, any nevela. By shechting just a veshet, you cannot remove the animal from its status of a nevela. So how could Rava make this distinction that if you shechted shaloi b'makom chatach, it would only be a treifa? That doesn't make any sense. It's like shechting an animal with no kana at all, because it's kamoncha b'dikula. It's as if it's sitting in a basket, not even in the animal anymore. Zok the Gemara, Ela Omer Abchi Bar Abba Omer Abyechanan Lo Kasha. We're going to have a different teretz, a distinction between Elu Trefis and our Mishnah. Kan Koidim Chazara, Kan La'acher Chazara. The reason why there it's called a treifa and here it's called an avela, because remember originally Rabbi Kiva held a psal l'shchita is only a treifa, and then he says he's changed his mind and he agreed to Rabbi Sheva that's an avela. Well, guess what? The Mishnah l'treifas was Rabbi Kiva's opinion before he was chayzer. The problem is what comes first, hashaychet or l'treifas? Hashaychet comes first. So how could you say that el treifas is before he changed his mind if that's coming after hashaychet? Since originally it was printed that way, and that's how the Chachamim memorized the Mishnayos, they didn't change it, even though at that point it was no longer relevant. Gufa. You shechted the kana. After you shechted the kana, and now the lung is completely dislodged, and then the lung got damaged. After the kana was cut already, Sheira, it wouldn't be a treifa. Why wouldn't it be a treifa? Because, as we said earlier, it's command the malcha b'dikula damya. It's as if the lung is already removed from the animal and sitting in a basket. At that point, if it got punctured, it wouldn't make a difference. That's only if it's the lung, because the lung is directly connected to the kana. But what if you cut the kana, and after you shechted the kana, before you shechted the veshet, some other treifas happened? Let's say it was nikah b'bnei ma'ayim, loy, there Reish Lakish would agree that in fact will be a treifa. It's only because the kana is not there anymore. Maskef lo Rab Zeira. So Rab Zeira asked the kasha, and he says, why should it make a difference? You're telling me that if siman treifa happened during the shechita process, we don't care anymore. So I bezoi mali bereya mali bibnei ma'ayim. Now you might ask me, there's a huge difference, because when you cut the kana, you've dislodged the reya, but when you cut the kana, the bnei ma'ayim are still there. Zok Rashi, Reb Zera doesn't agree with this reasoning. Reb Zera holds the reasoning for Reb Shimon Lakish is not because it's Kaman Chabidikula. Rather, Reb Zera has another shita, a Mechudishtik shita, who holds the following. The Svir Lon among the first intermediate line of Rashi. Kivin the Mitzasa Ishchid Sula Mitrafa. Once you start the Shchita, any psul treifa will not impact the animal anymore. Treifa could never occur when the animals have dead already. The animals have dead, you've started the shechita, it's the cutoff date. Once you start the shechita, it's immune to any type of treifas. So now his logic is very simple. What's the difference if the psul, the treifa, is in the reya? What's the difference if the treifas occurred in the bnei ma'ayim? But zok the Gemara, v'hodor bei Reb Zera. Reb Zera reversed his taina, and in fact he did accept that there's a strong distinction between if you shechted the kana, then the reis command the ronach v'dikula, and a psul in the reya wouldn't cause tarfus. But avada a psul in the bnei ma'ayim, even during the shechita, would cause it to be treif. What's the difference? What?
It's the reya or the...
Because if the moment you cut the kana, it's as if you've removed the lung from the animal and it's in the basket. If it gets damaged there, it's not part of the animal. But the bnei ma'ayim is still part of the animal. So the Gemara, the Bahadar ben Reb Zera. But the Ma'aser Reb Zera changed his mind, and he also agreed to that distinction between the kana and the veshet.
What was Reb Zera's kasha then?
Reb Zera's kasha is based on my understanding that there's a cutoff. Something cannot become treifa after you start the shechita, and that's the reason for Reb Lakish. So there, Rish Lakish should have said it across the board. So then Reb Zera said, no, I agree with Rav's pshat in Rish Lakish. So Zok the Gemara, the boy Reb Zera, how do I know Reb Zera's chayzer? Because he had the following shaila. What would happen if nikvu b'nei ma'ayim bein simen l'simen? You shechted the kana, then there was nikah b'nei ma'ayim, and then you shechted the veshet. Now, it's for sure a treifa. The question is it an avela? Mi mitzvah of simen rishon l'simen sheni l'tayr b'nei nevela. We know that the simen rishon and simen sheni work together. So do you say they work together to be mitar midei nevela or loy? V'amrinan, and we said, why is he clearing this shaila? This shaila was already cleared by Ilfa. Lav hainu de boy Ilfa. Isn't this a question that Ilfa asked? What was Ilfa shaila? What happened was you had a pregnant animal. You know, this is going to get into a whole new discussion, and I think we should pause. All I'm going to spill out is the maskana is if Reb Zera is clearing, is it an avela or not, right? That means for sure it's a trifle. That's all the Gemara is going to say. Getting into the weeds of the shaila of Reb Zera, that we'll say for tomorrow. But the maskana is going to be, Reb Zera's whole shaila is it tamei machmas nevela in this case, where it was Nikah b'nei ma'ayin ben simen rishon l'simen sheni. But for sure it's not edible. So you see clearly that Reb Zera holds that if a treifa happens during the shechita, it will make a treifa. And the only reason why Rish Lakish said that the lungs getting punctured after you shechted the kana, the only reason why that is going to be mutter according to Rish Lakish is because you look at it like the lungs are not even in the animal anymore. But a tarfus can occur even after the shechita started. Okay, we'll stop here.